Welcome, my loves, to the very first episode of This Too Shall Suck podcast, where we will talk about the real of grief, the whole grief, and nothing but the grief. I am your host, Loryn Denise, and I'm so happy to have you here. I'm so honored and I'm just so humbled that you took a part of your day to listen to me, little old me, and just my journey, and are so excited to share in this journey with you all. And I'm just like in shock and awe, and I've been emotional all day. I've really been emotional all week, to be honest, because I'm just so excited that this is something that I'm doing, that God laid on my heart to do. And I'm just I keep saying excited. I'm trying to think of another word, but I'm just really happy to be here and to be sharing with you all and sharing my journey that will hopefully help someone else. I shared with my girlfriends and actually a lot of my friends that if this podcast helps one person to feel like they're not alone, then I've done what I needed to do. I don't have to be the person who is going on tour with their podcast or making millions of dollars. I mean, let's be clear. Sorry, I got real Atlanta real quick. Let's be clear. I'll definitely take some money. Okay. We're not going to turn down any money. However, the whole purpose of this is to just really help people understand you're not alone in the journey and that there's so many different facets of grief. And it's not just about losing someone. You can literally lose a job and be grieving. You could be losing that boyfriend when you were 15 and be grieving. You could be grieving the loss of being single. Ooh, nobody wants to talk about that. That could be grieving. There's so many different avenues of grief. Grief has so many different faces and so many different avenues. And it's just crazy how much I've learned during my grieving process. And so I'm just so happy to be sharing with you all. So thank you guys for listening. And I'm just going to, this episode, we're just going to talk about who I am. I want you all to learn who Loryn Denise is. That's why I named it Who's That Girl? And if you know Eve, then you know that's her song. Who's that girl? La, 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 la. Listen, don't hate on my vocals, okay? Because they popping. I know. But honestly, I just wanted to kind of introduce myself so we can get familiar because we're going to go on this journey together. I don't know how long it's going to be. I don't know if it's going to be a week. I don't know if it's going to be a season. I don't know how long it's going to be. I have so much to talk about and so many things to share and have so many people I want to bring on to share. So I don't know. We're just going to go on this journey and figure it out as we go, y'all. So I want to introduce myself. And you all will be my loves. And let me just be clear that I am from the South. So everyone has a term of endearment. So we can have honey, babe, boo, love, sugar, sugarfoot. So you all are going to be my loves. So hello, my loves. My name is Loryn Denise. My real name is actually Loryn, Loryn. And most people call me Lolo. Let's see, L Boogie. One person calls me Lore and Ren. Well, he goes back and forth between Lore and Ren. So I have a whole bunch of nicknames. But for the sake of this, Loryn Denise, my middle name is Denise. So that's what I am going with is Loryn Denise. And I am actually born and raised in Atlanta, and I currently live in Atlanta. However, I've lived some other places. I lived in Memphis for a big majority of my life. My mom's family is from Memphis, so I lived there for, I think, 10 years. Then I lived in California for a little bit. That's where I found my love of the Lakers. So if you're not a Lakers fan and you're a hater, stop listening. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But that is where I found my love for the Lakers and basketball, to be honest with you. And then we moved back to Georgia. I went to Georgia State University. Go Panthers, the real GSU, not Georgia Southern. I went to Georgia State. I majored in hospitality administration, and then I worked in the world a little bit. Actually moved to Arizona and became a flight attendant for American Airlines. I was there for about 3.5 years. Really enjoyed myself, but it was just time for me to go after 3.5 years, move back to Atlanta, tried to do the entrepreneur thing for a little bit, failed miserably. And then I decided I wanted to go back to grad school. So I went back to grad school in 2018 and recently in 2019 graduated with my Master of Global Hospitality Management. So all things hospitality, your girl knows. And I am currently in the event planning, event managing space. I have my own event planning company called 31102 Events, which is in homage or honor of my parents. And I'll kind of dive into that a little bit later. But yeah, that's me. I have 4 siblings. I have 3 sisters and a brother. And I am the infamous middle child. So I definitely have middle child syndrome. So no judgment, but I definitely have middle child syndrome. Not as bad anymore, but I definitely have middle child syndrome. Oh, and I'm 32. I'll be 33. I'm a Libra. If anyone cares about zodiac signs, I'm not super into them. My friend is like super into them and she knows all the things zodiac. I know what I see online with the memes. So yeah, that's a little bit about me and my journey. So my story with grief and my journey on grief is actually, it's not, I don't want to make this sad. I don't want this podcast to be sad. I don't want it to be a sad thing. I don't want it to be just crying. And I'm not going to lie, I may get emotional at some point, but I don't want it to be sad. I want people to know that there is another side to grief. And I want people to understand also that you never get over it, you get through it. And so once you get through that process and get to the other side, it's so beautiful. And it's just so, you look back and you're like, wow, like I went from here to there and I went from there to here and I'm just in a much better place. And it may take a while and it may be quick or it may be long. And for me, I don't think grief is like a one-track thing, or I don't think there's a time limit on grief. I think that grief is something that kind of stays with you for a while. You just learn to adjust. So that's a big thing for me is when people say, oh, it gets easier. I never think it gets easier. I think you just learn how to adjust. And I think if you focus on adjusting to this new reality or this new normal of whatever that grief is, and whether that's losing someone or losing a job or not being engaged anymore, not being single, or, someone committing suicide or being a caregiver or anything, whatever the case is, I think you just focus on the adjusting to it. And that's what makes it easier. So it's not necessarily easy. It's the focus on adjusting that can make it seem like it's easy. But I'm not going to get to preaching here. All I'm going to say is it's not easy. It's not beautiful. It's not ugly. It's all of the above. So a little bit about my journey. In 2015, actually, let's go back. So in 2013, my mother, her name was Glenda Wellman, just the sweetest, most beautiful soul. And I'm not being biased. If anyone is listening to this has met my mother, they totally understand. She was such a sweet, just genuine human being. So in 2013, she was actually diagnosed with breast cancer. At the time, it wasn't, I don't think there was a stage at the time in 2013. We just knew that she had breast cancer. She had a lump in her breast. I actually felt it. It was crazy. She had a lump in her breast. So she went, did the mammogram, did all the stuff. She had breast cancer. All right, cool. She didn't want to go the typical route of chemo and radiation immediately, which I totally understand. And so she started looking into natural methods. So she found a doctor who kind of did it was a natural chemo. I can't remember the name of it, but she kind of went some natural methods essentially before she started doing chemo. And then that went all the way up until, I want to say 2014. Well, in 2014, they did the surgery to remove the tumor. They didn't remove her whole breast. They just removed the tumor. So they removed the tumor. That was in January of 2014. So they removed the tumor. They removed some lymph nodes. And, a month or so later, everything was clear. It was good. Great. Oh, sorry. Let me backtrack. So basically in 2013, after she did the natural stuff, she did end up going to the Cancer Treatment Center of America and did some chemo there. And so she did a mixture of the two, did the surgery in 2014. That was in January 2014. So we'll say in March 2014, we were good. We were like, word, mom ain't got cancer. Woo! We're in there, right? So we continue to go about our lives. And at the end of 2015, she started getting a lot of lung issues. She started having a lot of, she couldn't really breathe, and a lot of pneumonia, things like that. So she ended up going to the hospital. She was in and out the hospital for a while at the end of December, beginning of January. And when she did that, they found out that the cancer had spread to the lungs. And so they had her in and out the hospital. And then unbeknownst to us, it's wild, the things that you find out and how your parents kind of hold stuff in. But that's another topic on a whole nother episode. But unbeknownst to us, the cancer had not only spread to the lungs, it had spread to the brain as well. So this was in January 2015. We found all this out. And so she was in and out the hospital until finally they put her in ICU in February of 2015. At the time, I was living in Arizona. I was a flight attendant. And so I was going back and forth until one particular week, my dad called me and he said, I need you to come home. I'm going to take your mom off life support. And I just sat there. I was in my room and I just sat there on the floor and I lost it. And I called my job and I said, listen, I can't, I think I had a flight that night. And I was like, I can't work this flight. My dad's talking about taking my mom off life support. I have to go home. And they were like, absolutely. We completely understand. They took me off the flight and I went back home. Well, luckily he didn't take my mom off life support. And, we just decided as a family and prayed about it to keep, we're going to keep fighting. As long as she wants to keep fighting, we're going to keep fighting. Well, that was a pretty tumultuous and crazy, I want to say it was like two, maybe 3 weeks. So within 3 weeks of me making it back to Atlanta and living out of my suitcase, literally the clothes I had on my back is what I was wearing for 3 weeks at a time when my mom was in the hospital. My mom passed away on March 17th, 2015 at 8:30 p.m. And the reason that I know that is because I was in the room and it was St. Patrick's Day. And I had actually been out with my girlfriends and my dad called me and he said, hey, I need you to come back. They want to do this breathing test on your mom because she had the tubes down her throat. She was in ICU at the time. So they had tubes down her throat, all these things. And so I was at dinner with my girlfriends, St. Patrick's Day, we were drinking all the green beers and stuff. And I said, y'all, I gotta go. I think my mom is dead. And they literally just looked at me and bust out crying. And I didn't cry. I think I was just in shock, or I just didn't know what to say or what to do in that moment. And so I went to the hospital. It was me and my dad in the room. And then it was the doctor and I think the nurse maybe. And they took her off the breathing machine. And the test was basically to see if she can breathe on her own. Y'all, it was an 8-minute test. And it was the longest 8 minutes of my whole entire existence. I just literally was in the room praying to God that that I would see her chest move or a breath to come out or for her to move her hand or something. And at that point, they declared her brain dead. And so we called my sisters and we called my brother. We were like, hey, we need you guys to come up here. And then when everybody got up there, they took her off all of the life machine, all the supports essentially. And yeah, she just kind of went peacefully. We all stood around her. We all were holding her hand and just touching her and talking to her. And it was such a surreal moment because we were there for it may have taken like 7 minutes for her to finally stop, I guess, breathing. But she wasn't breathing. It was really weird. So we were standing there and there's reflexes after someone passes sometimes that happen. Like your body is naturally doing things. And so she squeezed my sister's hand. And when she did it, my sister was like, oh my God, she squeezed my hand. And my dad knocked her out the way. It wasn't funny at the time, but like afterwards, I was like, dang, he like knocked her. He knocked her out the way to grab her hand. And literally, as soon as my dad grabbed her hand, because you can see her heart beating, right? But she took 2 breaths and then her heart stopped. It was a surreal moment, but it seemed so like it was peaceful. Like it was peaceful for her to go. And so, yeah, it was crazy. It was, at the time I was 27 and I just, I didn't have my mom, and it was just it was rough. It was rough. And so, fast forward to October of 2015, I wanted to do something to honor my mom because that's Breast Cancer Awareness Month. I wanted to do something to honor her. I just didn't know what it was. And so what I did was started doing a hashtag, which was Spirit of GW. And I vowed to do something kind for a stranger. Well, not necessarily a stranger, for just doing something kind every day, the month of October, up until my birthday, which is October 21st, to honor my mother. And anytime I would do something in public, like if I would pay for someone's food, I would have a letter and I would say, hey, I want to pay for this car's food. Can you give me this letter? Or I think I left some money one time on the vending machine and I wrote a letter and put Spirit of GW. And so there was just different things I wanted to do to honor my mother, and just creating that hashtag was one of them. And so that really gave me kind of a relief, or not a relief, a release, I guess, from being sad or being angry or just not understanding why this sweet woman who took care of herself, who wasn't unhealthy, literally had been removed from this earth, when there are so many bad people who I could think of who would probably, people might not grieve over. I'm sorry, that was mean. Let me not say that. What I'm saying is that I didn't understand why this beautiful soul was taken so soon. My mother was 57 at the time that she passed. So to me, that's still young, and she was healthy. So I was just very confused. So just doing that hashtag and doing something kind gave me a relief. So fast forward to 2019. My father, Dennis F. Wellman. If anybody knew Dennis F. Wellman who was listening to this, they knew he was a ham, okay? Ham. He was off the chain. When I tell you off the entire chain, that's where he was. He was loud. He was, you knew he was in the room, not just because of his loudness, because he was going to make it known. He was funny. He could cook his ass off. Well, he can cook some ribs. Now, vegetables, listen, let me tell you, me and my dad would go back and forth. He's like, I don't cook no vegetables. I cook meat only. So he could cook his ass off with some meat, with some ribs to be specific. And he was just so loving and funny and charming. And he was off the chain. I love when I tell you Dennis F., that was my big dog. That was my dog, Dennis F. Wellman. But in 2019, he had started this barbecue business. I told him, I said, Dad, you need to start this business. You need to start this business. So I put it on Facebook. I said, hey, how many people would buy a plate if Dennis F. Wellman started a barbecue business? And so many people responded that he actually started it. This was literally in May of, well, maybe April, end of April, May of 2019. And he started his business, Papa D's Tenderlicious Barbecue. And so we were all so hyped and so excited. So then Memorial Day weekend. Yep, Memorial Day weekend. He goes into the hospital because he's not feeling well. Because in 2017, he actually had to get a kidney transplant. So my little sister, Christina, God bless her, gave my dad her kidney. And so she has one kidney and he had two, but it saved his life. So he had to be very mindful and cautious about things because now he only has this one functioning kidney and, he just has to do things a little different. So he went into the hospital because he was having issues. I can't remember the exact issues, but he went to the hospital Memorial Day weekend. We knew or we thought it was something with the kidney. So he went to the hospital. The doctor at the time was like, I want to do like another biopsy on your bladder because something's not right. Because he was having bladder issues prior to this. He was having bladder issues a year before, but the doctor at the time who... Listen, don't even get me upset. Anyways, the doctor at the time before was basically like, oh, it's fine. You'll get over it, instead of doing the proper test. And so this doctor in 2019, Memorial Day weekend, was like, I want to look at your bladder. Something's not right. Let me take a look. She takes a look. Come to find out, there is cancer in his liver. And she thinks that it has started from somewhere else, his bladder. So at this point, we're thinking it's metastasized to his liver. So, of course, it's like, you hear the blow like, oh, my God, not again. I remember when he told me, I was just literally in shambles that day. I think my roommate probably thought I was crazy because I was literally just crying like, not again. Because it's funny. I tried not to go into that place of like, what if you lose him? But I had to go to that place to be like, okay, realistically, if it's already moved to his liver, who knows like where else it is. But at the same time, I believe in God and I believe that, there's miracles and he can heal. And so I kind of had to go through that whole motion. So we started doing everything we need to do. We started research and finding the greatest doctors. We found doctors in Emory, and literally from May through July and August, like me and my dad, me and my sister, like we were rolling to these hospital visits. We were going to doctor's appointments. I mean, we were literally doing everything we need to do, getting his port, just everything we can to try and help. Well, in August of 2019, he was in the hospital for 17 days, literally back and forth, to the fact that me and my little sister literally spent the night there every single night. And if we didn't, we had someone there day in and day out, because it's so sad to say this, and this will be another episode, but the fact that we had to advocate so hard for my dad, because the things that they did in that hospital, he would have been dead definitely 2 days after he'd been in the hospital because of just certain things that they were careless about. And so we were literally there day in, day out. If we weren't there, we had someone come relieve us for some hours, but spending the night, we definitely were there every single day and every single night. I don't think my dad was alone by himself for more than like an hour, because we just wanted to make sure that he was getting the proper care. So he was in the hospital for 17 days. Then he got discharged to a physical therapy center. Well, it was in the hospital, but he got released to a physical therapist so that he can get his strength back so he can do chemo. Well, unfortunately, he was there and something happened and he got sent to ICU. And when he got sent to ICU, he passed away in ICU. And again, I was in the room when he passed away. However, this time, my dad can't be peaceful because he's Dennis Wellman and he always has to put on a show. So his passing was not as peaceful. I definitely was in the room. I'll probably go into the whole story later, but just know I was in the room. For me, it was kind of scary to see. I don't know if you all have ever seen when someone codes. It's much different. When I tell you, it's much, much different than it is on TV to watch someone's head roll to the side and their eyes roll to the back of the head is a much different experience than when you see it on TV. And it took me a very long time to get that image out of my head. But nonetheless, I was definitely in the room again when he coded. And all my siblings came up there and, he coded a few more times. And we were just kind of like, he's trying to leave. He's trying to go. And he passed away. And so on August 27th, 2019, my dad passed away from bladder cancer. So it did start in the bladder and it did move to the liver. And so I definitely know a thing or two about grief, because I will say that I don't feel like I properly processed the grief of my mother. And I thought I was getting to a place where I was kind of healing right when my dad passed, and then he passed. And so it just hit me like a Brinks truck. And it was not good, y'all. It was not good. I'm a type of person who, when things happen, I'm like, let's get it done. Let's figure it out. So I go into planning mode. I go into go mode. And maybe that's being an event planner. Maybe it's being the middle child. I don't know. But I just go into planning. So, I'm planning the funeral. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. And then when I stop, it just hit me like, oh my gosh, like I don't have either one of my parents here. And of course, it was right before the holidays. So y'all can imagine it was terrible. But what I will say is prayer works, and not necessarily you praying for yourself, because there was a point in time where I literally did not pray. I didn't talk to God. I didn't look at church. I just couldn't. And it wasn't that I was mad at God. I was never mad at God. I just didn't have anything to say, because what am I saying? Because before both of them passed, I'm pleading on my knees to you, and then they passed. So I just had nothing to say, and I didn't hate him. And I think that's the beautiful thing, is that, God knows your heart and he still loves you regardless. But I just didn't have anything to say. So I had beautiful people in my life who would pray for me to get through it. And thank God I was open enough to go to therapy. And I think it's important. And that's definitely going to be a whole episode on why people need therapy, especially if you are in the Black community, and why we need therapy the absolute most, and how important it is to go. I went to therapy. I just was surrounded so much by love from my friends, my family. And it just took me a few months. Well, it took me a while to get through. I'm not even going to say that I'm completely over it, because again, you never get over it. You get through it. And there's another side. And I feel like I'm to the other side, but I still have those moments. But I think going to therapy, having such a strong support system, and just having the optimism and outlook that I have, and the faith that I have in God, that knowing he can heal no matter what you're going through, helped me, and has helped me, and continues to help me every single day of my life. And so I'm just, again, so excited to share with you all this journey, to understand grief, and to know that grief is not just about losing someone. For me, that was my trigger, or that was my big grief. But I've grieved before unknowingly, essentially. I didn't know it was grief. When I lost that boyfriend in 7th grade, and I was devastated, honey. When I tell you that was my husband, he was my husband, y'all. Clearly he wasn't, okay? But I was hurt, and I was grieving. Or I lost a job, or even that year when I quit being a flight attendant, and I was doing the entrepreneur thing, and it was just not working, and it was just not successful. I really was struggling, y'all, and I was grieving during that. Or even, I know some of y'all might get emotional, but when Kobe died, y'all, literally when Kobe died, I was triggered severely. I had to cut off my phone. It was bad. I had a bad day, y'all. I cried all day long, and it was just bad. And it wasn't that I never met Kobe. And it wasn't that I was just like a diehard Kobe fan, even though I was, and I love the Lakers. But it was so much deeper. There was something there that I didn't know until, again, I had to go to therapy and figure out what it was that triggered me, that really bothered me. And so really, and I think a lot of people honestly grieved around the world. A lot of my guy friends grieved. Some of them are still grieving now, and grief, like I said, grief, she or he or it is a bad mother sucker. And I didn't say the F-bomb. I said sucker. But it's so different, and it's such a complex thing, and it's so sad, and it's so hurtful, and it's all that, okay? But it's so beautiful, and it's so motivating, and it's so something that we all go through that we don't want to talk about. And that's why I am talking about it. And that's why I am so excited to just be on this journey. I'm so excited that you guys listened. And I know we're tapping on 30 minutes here. So thank you all so much for listening and joining me on this journey. And thank you as we continue to go on this journey. Like I said, we're all in it together. Yes, it's me talking, but we all have to heal from something. And you may not know what it is, but you may be listening to this and be like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think about that. Maybe I am struggling with this, and maybe I do need to talk to somebody, or maybe I need to open up, or maybe I need to forgive that person. Whatever it is, we all need healing, y'all. And I'm just so excited to be able to help in the process of healing, because I had so many people, and besides God, help me in the process of healing. So I'm so excited to be able to help you all in the process of healing. So thank you all so much for listening. I love y'all so much. And again, thank you. I'm going to keep saying thank you because I'm just so humbled and honored. I can't believe this is my first episode. Oh my God, y'all, it's my first episode. I'm so excited, but thank you so much for listening to This Too Shall Suck podcast, where we talk about the real of grief, the whole grief, and nothing but the grief. You can follow me on social media on Instagram at TTSSpod, and you can visit my website at thistooshallsuckpod.com. Also, feel free to drop me a line about any questions or topics you want to hear at hello@thistooshallsuckpod.com. And please remember to rate, review, and subscribe, and share this podcast with someone you think it could help. As always, guys, I love you, and I'm sending you love and light in your life because you deserve it. I'll see you on the next episode. This Too Shall Suck podcast is produced by Mike Sick, and our original music is produced by Jimmy Samaj.